Hello, wrestling fans.
Are you ready? Let me tell you something, brother. British Wrestling's very own Steve Saxon presents the iSax Wrestling Podcast. It's just one more platform for him to get his shit in.
After a long break, the iSax Wrestling Podcast is now back, and we're back with a bang. First and foremost, I want to apologise. It's been quite a long break, longer than I anticipated. The last podcast that I did, I was just going over to Spain for 3 weeks, had a brilliant time with my partner and one of my best friends, longest friends, Adam Moorcraft. We laughed so much that I just couldn't get out of the holiday mood. I've had so much on Britannia Wrestling promotions with home life and with all the little ventures and projects I've got going on around me that I've just not had time to buckle down to iSax. But you'll be pleased to know that I am back full swing now. I've got a number of interviews lined up. But we're going to be starting with this one. This is the last one I promised you, and I've been sat on it for 3 months now. This is an interview with the creator, not the owner, not the founder, but the creator of 5-Star Wrestling, Mr. Daniel Hinkles. A complete unknown commodity in the world of British wrestling, but a guy that popped up a couple of years ago with a video game, 5-Star Wrestling video game for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, that found a little bit of success, I suppose. He started running live wrestling shows up and down the UK. He's held a match to this date, which is the 11th of September 2017. He's held 5 shows. They've all been somewhat of a medium success, and he's made a bit of a name for himself. But then this week, news came out on Twitter and on social media that a new British TV channel, or British TV network, Free Sports UK, are going to be showcasing 5-Star Wrestling shows, and it has caused a massive shitstorm in the wrestling community. People are not happy. And I think once you listen to this interview, you'll get a bit more of understanding why people are not happy. Back 3 months ago, let's go back to June, the end of May, beginning of June, when I first recorded this with Daniel. He contacted me because news had just broke that his huge scheduled UK tour had been cancelled, or as he says, rescheduled, but at that time it had been cancelled. No public announcement was made from 5-Star, from Daniel himself. It was actually made by a few of his roster members who jumped straight on social media once they'd been told that the tour had been cancelled or rescheduled or whatever, and said, look, I'm available for these dates now, I need to get these dates filled up, hook me up with some promoters. So instantly, wrestling fans who are smart to these things now jumped on, realised that those dates that they're now available for were the scheduled 5-Star dates, and they started throwing some suggestions around as to why they were cancelled. And a couple of the wrestlers actually stated openly, publicly, why they were told the reason why that the tour was cancelled by Daniel himself personally. So back then I did a bit of digging, spoke to a couple of the wrestlers involved, spoke to a venue of 5-Star Wrestling as well, and I got a reason back. And there was 2 reasons. First one being that ticket sales were poor, they were set to make no money, so they pulled the dates. Hey, that's wrestling, that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes it happens. Done it myself with Britannia Wrestling before. If I'm not going to turn a profit or I'm going to make a massive loss, I'd rather cut my losses and move on to the next thing. It happens. It's not ideal, but it happens. And the second reason, I am not morally allowed to state. And once we get into this interview, you'll understand why. So Daniel Hinkles contacted me and said he was happy to do his first and only public live interview via the iSax Wrestling Podcast, and I appreciate that. I love the hits, I love the likes, I love the feedback and the banter that goes on the social media pages, whether it be Twitter or Facebook. I love all that. So this was great. It was ideal for me. So we set off. It was supposed to be about an hour-long interview. It actually lasted in excess of 2 to 2.5 hours in the end. And halfway through this interview, where it was always going to be said, he knew it, I knew it, you knew it. It was always going to be based around the reasons for the cancellation of the tour. Now, I start off very nicely. I ask him about his transition from the world of video games into the world of live shows, his back history as a wrestling fan. Turns out he did a little bit of training. He wasn't cut out for that that side of the business, so he kind of took a step back and took, like a lot of people do, think, well, I can't be a wrestler, so I'll promote wrestling instead, because obviously anybody can do that, right? Right. And then we got to that particular question. of why did you, Daniel Hinkle's creator, not owner or founder, creator of 5-Star Wrestling, why did you pull your shows? Why did you not make a public announcement about that, and why were your roster so pissed at your decision and your reason for cancelling these shows that they went straight to social media and let the entire world know? Why was that? And he didn't like that, and he pulled the biggest cunt trick in the world, and he pulled the ace card of the off the record card. And I played with the idea of, you know what, I'm illegally tied to do this. He knew I was going to ask the question. That's the whole reason he came onto this podcast, to justify or to give his side, his reasons for cancelling. And then he said I wasn't allowed to put it out there. Morally, I shouldn't, and I'm not going to. I'm sorry, I'm not going to, morally. I want other guests that come onto the ISACS podcast, I want them to, in future, I want them to feel that what we discuss is open and it's transparent, but it's also that they can trust me. I will ask the controversial questions, I will ask the awkward questions, and I don't care if I get heat for it, but I'm going to do it all above board. So I am sorry to the listeners, you're not going to get the exact response that you're looking for. But stick around till the end of the podcast, because at the end of the podcast, before I put it live, I sent it out to a good friend of mine, Mike Holland. You know him. Some of you may know him as DJ King. I asked him to listen to it before I put it public. He's only listened to the edited version as well. Nobody has listened to the full version of this. And we won't until I get say-so from Daniel Hinkles himself that he doesn't mind me putting it out there. Who knows? I doubt it's going to happen, but who knows? Once he's listened to this, I'm sure he's going to tell a few people that, you know, I've kind of stitched him up and I've edited it down to make him sound really, really terrible. Trust me, Daniel, it took very little editing to make you sound terrible and for you to bury yourself. I did not have to. I put my shovel away, mate. You had your gold-plated shovel in your hand throughout this entire fucking interview, mate. But stick around to the end of the podcast. Mike listens to it, and he's not morally nor legally obliged or tied to say nothing about what has been alleged online from Daniel Hinkle's own roster, Daniel Hinkle's own fans. He's not tied to that, I am. So stick around. We've got a few interesting things to throw about at the end of the podcast. But for now, I'm going to start off. It starts off a bit slow, and you know, it's about, you know, the history, nicey. But stick around. We do take a little bit of a cut in the middle where he throws that ace card in there. But then we do come back and we do discuss CM Punk. We discuss why and how he offered CM Punk £1 million to come back and fight his comeback match for 5-Star Wrestling. You get to hear Daniel Hinkles compare himself at 5-Star Wrestling to Vince McMahon, WWE, Ring of Honor, New Japan. You get to hear what Daniel Hinkles' thoughts are on his roster, on certain members of his roster who went public, and what his general thoughts are on the British wrestling fans. It's very, very interesting. So without further ado, after 3 months waiting, ladies and gentlemen, the creator of 5-Star Wrestling, Mr. Daniel Hinkles.
Professional wrestling personalities with no filter in sight. Sit back and relax, because it's time for the ISACS U-Talk interview. Seriously, who thinks of these names?
Right, ladies and gentlemen, with me today is the creator of 5-Star Wrestling, Mr. Daniel Hinkles from Dundee. First of all, Daniel, thank you very much for taking the time out today and coming onto the ISACS podcast to talk to me. Thank you very much.
Hey Steve, thanks for having me.
Okay, now I'm going to be honest with you, Daniel. I've done a bit of research, as I do with all my guests. I can't really find that much about you personally. There's quite a lot about 5-Star Wrestling floating around on Google and Wikipedia, but not a lot about you personally. So I would like, if you don't mind, to kickstart this with you telling us a little bit about you, about your involvement in the wrestling business, about what got you involved with British wrestling, and basically your background in the business.
Oh, wow. Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up watching wrestling like everybody else did. I'm 32 years old, so I grew up right in the Attitude. You know, when the Attitude Era was at its peak, I was 13, which would have been just about right for Steve Austin and all the rest of the thing, right? I absolutely loved wrestling all my life, really. From when I was around 18 years old, I travelled something like 300 miles down to Portsmouth to train at the FWA Academy for a very tiny amount of time. Realised very quickly that wasn't something I should be doing. I mean, it was too far away to be fair. I mean, 18-year-old kid trying to travel that far. Now that's where all the big success stories that we love to hear come from. But there's a reason that those guys make it. It's because they're that dedicated about that kind of thing.
You say you're travelling down to Portsmouth. Is that because there was no training schools in your area?
Oh, I mean, I bear in mind I was from a little town called Bridlington, which is on the east coast of Yorkshire. There was no training school, but I think there was only 2 in the country at the time anyway. I mean, we're talking about 10, 11 years ago, something along them kind of lines. 14 years ago even. So
yeah, I mean, obviously, with the growth of British wrestling, in turn, there's been more and more training schools popping up and down all over the UK. I mean, we're absolutely saturated with training schools at the moment, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I understand completely where you're coming from. When I first got in the business when I was 16, there was no training school as such. I was just very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time with a North Wales-based promoter, and he kind of taught me at live shows, on the go. So yeah, I understand exactly what you mean. But when you say that it wasn't really for you, do you mean like as well as the distance, obviously, which is a major factor back then? Was it the physical side as well? How did you take to that side of the wrestling business?
no, I loved that side of it. I would have absolutely have loved to have been able to do it. I'll be honest. At the time, I just couldn't afford to make the travel. I mean, I don't come from a wealthy background or anything along them kind of lines. And when I say I travelled there and trained, it was like I say, it was a very short period of time. We did like a week-long training seminar, and then I think I might have gone back for one more occasion or something. I realised very quickly it wasn't for me. But it was just the travel to start with. I just couldn't afford it. I loved the physicality of it. I loved everything about it. I mean, like, I've always loved everything about it. And truth be told, if there had been a school around that kind of area where I was growing up, I would probably have got there. But I just at the time I just had no way of doing it. I couldn't even afford the hotel when I went down for the training camp. A friend of mine was very gracious, and he came down and paid for that. I think he came from a bit more of an affluent background than I did. He certainly helped me out there, and now he's on the scene somewhere. So that's quite nice. But yeah, that was me. We did the training camp, and it was a lot of fun. I loved it, but I just knew there and then as well. I knew that I'm quite a clumsy guy. I can't help that. I'm 6'1", and I'm a little bit clumsy. And during the match, I went for a big old clothesline on somebody. He jumped into the air. I smashed him clean in the face, knocked him clean out, and realised how quickly I could very much hurt somebody. And I didn't want to do that, to be honest. So
when you went down to FWA, who was it that was actually training you down there?
Mark Sloan was there.
Oh, okay.
It was him. There was I want to say James Ty. I mean, like some of the names have probably come and gone over the years. And there was a guy called Justin. Oh God, that's gonna haunt me. That I can't remember his last name.
Justin Starr.
I mean, he was an actual amateur wrestler, not just a professional.
Okay.
But he was a great guy, really nice guy. It was a really great experience for me. I took a bad bump on some like the 4th day down there and hurt myself, hurt my eye, and I just had I lost vision in one eye for about half a day, and I just said, like, this is great, and if it was in the local area, I would have loved to have carried on, but it really wasn't for me.
It's just too far. So you're 18 years old. You're travelling down to Portsmouth. You get trained by Mark Sloan, who's obviously very well respected in the British wrestling scene. You decide it's not for you for financial reasons and logistical reasons. Is that it? Is that where your story within this business ends, or did you carry on?
No.
Did you work for promotions as setting the ring up, or being a manager or referee or anything like that?
Well, that's where it starts, and I had the taste for it at that point in time. So I mean, back then I didn't think that was going to be it. And but one of the things like the likes of JR and all that lot used to say all the time was that they would always encourage a wrestler to go and get a skill set beforehand. But the thing that I went into was video games. And one of the things that I've always loved alongside the wrestling is the wrestling video games. I've always been very passionate about that. I would put designs up on the wrestling game forums all the time, constantly sending in ideas. I applied for a job at THQ so I could go work on the WWE games, sent them all kinds of ideas, some of which have made it into the games over the years, which is fantastic. But yeah, that was really my side of it, was like, look, if I could go do this, I could still be some way related to the part of the business. And one of the games that I wanted to make from a very young age was a game called Wrestling Manager. I think I was around 13 when I first started prototyping that, and that was a game about running shows, putting on shows, signing talent, signing TV deals. So that's something I've always been fascinated by.
Very much like the popular Football Manager game, I take it, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it was inspired by Premier Manager on the Mega Drive, I think it was, that I was really into at the time, and I was like, there should be something like this for wrestling, and everybody loves the backstage stuff of wrestling, right? So I thought, well, look, we could do something similar for that. Yeah, I mean, but by the time I turned 26, we finally managed to be able to release that game, which was fantastic. I set up a game studio, managed to raise some cash to do that. We released Wrestling Manager. It went to #1 in the charts. We did very well out of that. And what that meant was we could have a little room to play. We'd already designed 5-Star Wrestling, the video game, which came out on the PS3 and then came out on the PS4. I designed that years before we built the studio, if you like. And when we built the studio and I managed to hire a whole ton of staff and get all this up and running and going, we got the game out there. We're still working on the game today. So then when it came time for promoting the game, we started doing things like sponsoring local wrestling events around the country. We then started touring with a video camera crew and interviewing wrestlers, and a couple of friends of mine run various wrestling promotions, and we was doing that for about a year or so. Not touring for a full year, but sponsoring events here and there, and yeah. So we just more and more was worming our way towards the business, if you like, and I was helping out at some shows, and then before you know it, I was in a position where we could kind of see how this thing was going to work, and we was ready to execute the plans that we'd been working on for quite a while.
So moving forward, Dan. So you 18 years old, you're a lifelong fan. You try your hand at wrestling. Logistical and financial reasons you can't commit. You want to stay in the wrestling business. You've obviously got the qualifications and experience in gaming, and you start working towards the 5-star wrestling game on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. You have success with that, and then you decide, that's it, we're going to start doing arena shows. We're going to do live wrestling shows in Britain. You start off September 2015. You have another tour in January 2016, is that right? Newcastle, Liverpool and Sheffield?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. That's a huge thing.
Earlier on this year, am I right to say, in January you had another show up in Dundee again?
Yeah, it was in Dundee. It was as far as I'm aware, it was the first ever live broadcast of professional wrestling on national television. And
that was on Spike TV, right?
It was on Spike TV, which is run by Channel 5. The contract was with Channel 5, so it was that was a huge thing for us. We was very proud of that. Again, first time doing live TV, and it's our 5th show, so I mean, there was a few hiccups here and there. But we love what we came out with, and it was certainly something that we could build on going forward.
Now, I'm asking this completely naively. Did you get that deal with Spike TV? First of all, was it a one-off deal? Was it for the one show?
No, the deal with Spike was for a full series.
Okay. And has that series aired on Spike, or was it just the one show that was aired on Spike?
The one show was aired on Spike, and it was always intended to be that night was going to be like a one-night special to announce the series. and the series was always going to be starting later on in the year. I think we announced the date live on TV.
Right.
But the I mean, I'll be straight with you. The ratings wasn't what anybody wanted them to be. There was decent, and there was very good reasons for why there wasn't tremendous. But I mean, like I was told the other week that our show did better than TNA's second show. Like their first show did better than ours, but their second show didn't do as good. So that gives you an idea of the kind of ratings we was getting. It wasn't a brilliant thing for Spike. They wanted a brand. They'd already been talking in the US. So they cancelled the show, which was unfortunate. But at the same time, it wasn't really working for any of us the way that we wanted that to. The trailer for that, to put this into perspective, the trailer for 5-Star Wrestling on Spike TV got 550,000 views online just on one video. If you counted them all together, it got something in the region of about 2.4 million. The ratings on TV we hit 125,000 at the peak. So it didn't make the kind of sense to me that we would get 2-odd million online, but only 125,000 on the actual TV channel. And TNA, to put that in perspective, got 150 on their first show, which was heavily promoted by Spike. Spike wouldn't promote ours at all. In fact, if you go back and look, we announced the show with Drew Galloway 2 weeks prior to the event. Spike wouldn't even retweet the announcement of it. They was very against promoting the show whatsoever. In the final week beforehand, they did start running trailers on TV. But there was all kinds of mess ups where in one Sky planner they was calling it 5-Star Wrestling, and another Sky in the Virgin planner they was calling it Dominant Wrestling. There was just all kinds of mess ups, it wasn't great. And I think in the end, Spike wasn't overly happy with how it went down. We wasn't happy with how it went down. So we've gone our separate ways.
Right, okay. I mean, it's a little bit unfair, I suppose, to judge on your first show, your first televised show. I mean, World of Sport, when they had their comeback show on New Year's Eve, I know they were expecting in the region of 8 million viewers, and they ended up getting, I think the last figures was something like 1.8, 1.9 million. So, quite a way off what they were actually looking for, but they've since commissioned a 10-week series. Obviously, I'm sure you've heard all about that. That's been a little bit up in the air as well. That's been pulled, postponed until later on in the year. I think it's a little bit unfair for them to give like a one shot and then say, oh, well, the ratings weren't exactly what we're looking for, so we're going to go talk to Jeff Jarrett again. So, but you never know what happened, what might happen with that. I mean, you have got some excellent names that you're bringing in. Particularly your imports. I mean, some amazing British talents out there at the moment that you're taking full use of. But the Americans, the imports, if you will, that you're bringing over. I mean, the names that you've got on there. I mean, your champion at the moment. I'm still right in saying it's still John Morrison, Johnny Mundo.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And as well as him, I mean, I've seen, like I said, there's not a lot about you, but there's quite a bit about 5-Star Online. You've got RVD, you've got Moose, you've got Carlito, Brian, PJ Black, just to name a few. So you're always going to, of course, Rey Mysterio, as you mentioned before, you're always going to draw the attention of British fans if you put these big, and they are big American names on there. I have no problem with that at all. In British wrestling, as I've said many times, British wrestling has always thrived and been built on our own core talent and the use of big names from around the world. So you're doing no different than any other promoter. You're doing no different than I'm doing, except you're going out there and you're doing it on a much bigger scale. So fast forward again, Dan. Let's get up to what's going on at the moment. So there's been big news floating around this past week that your tour dates were cancelled. You had quite a lot of tour dates out there, I must say, in some of the biggest arenas in Britain. And you were about to kickstart this 128-man tournament. Let's just pause there for a second. 128-man tournament. Was this your brainchild?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I've been in the wrestling business 20 years. I've competed in a lot of tournaments. I've held a lot of tournaments at my own shows at Britannia Wrestling. Never have I heard of a 128-man tournament.
that's why we wanted to do it.
That's why you want to do it, of course. It's something new, right? Do you feel that maybe it was a little bit too big a tournament?
No, we're going to do it.
You're still intending to do this. Because obviously your shows, which we'll get onto after, your shows, your tour has been rescheduled and cancelled, but the plan is still to hold this 128-man tournament in the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Do you not feel? I mean, I put this question out there on my Facebook page and on my Twitter account. That about 128-man tournament isn't actually a tournament until the final stages. And what I mean by that is you could have a number of different singles matches on a number of different shows, but until your fan base are actually seeing who's in the, when you're getting close to the quarterfinals or the semi-finals, that's when they'll really start showing an interest, because they'll see where the tournament's going to end up. At this stage of the tournament, or let's say it's the opening night of your show, you've got your first 3 rounds of the tournament on there. Are people really going to invest in a tournament that's going to take that long across that many different venues? Because you haven't got the Spike TV deal anymore. So not everybody in the country is going to be able to see what's on Spike TV. You're more likely just to follow what's going on at the local arenas that you're visiting.
No, I don't. We don't have the Spike TV deal, you're right, but that doesn't mean we don't have a place where people are going to be able to watch this. We'll release more info on that down the line.
Okay.
We're going to be running on Thursday nights, so I mean, people will indeed be able to watch these shows around the country. And, just like we'll eventually release the footage from the shows that we've done previously, they've all been recorded. Maybe we won't release the footage from the first one because the footage came out quite green, if I'm honest. But the footage from the last tour that we did last year was incredible. I say it's incredible. It's of the level of the What Culture shows, I guess, because it's done by the same team. What Culture came and hung out in Newcastle before there was a wrestling promotion at our show. They was backstage. We gave them full access to all the talent and all the production crew. And, a couple of months later, they set up their own company as What Culture, using the same talent and the same production company.
I mean, What Culture, obviously they've been in the news this past week as well, with the YouTube changing their licensing regulations. That's really impacted their shows, their streaming services, and obviously their finances as well. You say you got something in the pipeline where everybody will be able, no matter where they are, everybody's going to be able to follow this tournament from start to finish. So obviously we can only assume that you've got your own online streaming service set up or lined up. I know, don't get me wrong, I wish you luck. It's a new idea, it's a new concept. I've seen mixed reactions from it, but the proof's in the pudding, right? You do this and you make a success of it, then I'm sure we'll see more and more 128-man tournaments cropping up from different promotions up and down the UK.
You're right. It's hey, listen, nobody's ever done it before. We want to go out there and give it, make it something special. That's the plan here. Make this something that's big. And we announced that. I don't know, back in January, and when we did, the reaction was great. And then a week later, after announcing that we was going to do the biggest tournament in wrestling history, a week later, What Culture announced that they was doing the World Cup. And kind of people are seeing how that's turning out. I think there's been some decent interest on that. I think there's some different ways of doing tournaments. I think that's the key. You're making reasonable assumptions, I guess, that the early rounds are going to be singles matches, but they're not going to be singles matches. We'll release the format down the line. But I agree with you. I think people start revving up about the tournament towards the end, just like they do with the World Cup. Whenever we watch the any other sport, it's more towards the end that people get so into it. But I think that's where the stories are created, right? Like, that's the beauty of a wrestling company doing such a big tournament, is that it's something where every match actually matters, as opposed to random matches galore. And don't get me wrong, the World Cup's not the only part of these shows. Sorry, not the World Cup. We're not calling it that. The tournament that we're doing is not the only part of these shows. We've got other things that we're going to be doing. There's going to be more championship divisions created. We're going to have a lot of fun making these shows, and there's going to be some really great production values involved. if you'd have, I mean, like the crew that we had in January this time doing the footage was spectacular. We had a huge OB truck out the back. It was, it was just splendid. But we want to improve on that significantly, and that's what we're aiming for. So the footage coming out of this is going to be of a higher caliber than what we've done before. And the talent that we're bringing in is incredible. I mean, we've got Rob Van Dam, Rey Mysterio, and so on. So it's, not to mention some of the top indie names, some of the top UK guys, and it's just, we wanted to do something special. We wanted to do something that's not out there, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay. Nice to see. The best of luck with you with that one. I will be keeping my eyes peeled to see how that one goes. All right, so I'm going to get on to now that what's happening right now. Obviously, you're online. You see what's being said. You cancelled your tour that was supposed to start in June, right? Across June and July. You cancelled. It started off with 1 or 2 venues, and I'm right in saying that all of the entire tour has now been cancelled.
Well, we didn't start off with 1 or 2. We made one announcement. It's on our Facebook page, and you can see it. That was the only time we announced that we was rescheduling the tour.
Okay.
There was rumours on the early morning before we announced it that was going to happen, because some guys went out there, and after I was letting them know and asking them to keep it to themselves, there was unfortunately rushing to Twitter and all the rest of things, and before you know it, journalists peeking their head up and saying, hey, a lot of these guys are out there doing this, and people put 2 and 2 together.
I mean, by guys, I assume that you're talking about some of your UK roster members who are now obviously they're looking to fill those dates up, because in fairness, you did give them a lot of dates, and if those dates are no longer there, a lot of these guys do it on a full-time basis, and it's their living. So they are getting onto their social media platforms to try and fill up the dates that they no longer book for. Go ahead, please.
I get what you're saying there, and don't get me wrong, everybody's entitled to run out and get their work started. That said, I think when you ask a guy to just keep it quiet for a day, just so you can make sure everybody that's involved finds out from you rather than finding out from somebody else, I don't think that's unreasonable. And when you say, yeah, no worries, I'll keep that to myself, I think going on Twitter 5 minutes later is probably a tad harsh. That said, some people found out from other people, and that was very regretful and should never have happened. It makes you, when that happened, and some people might say, oh, well, it was inevitable. We was 24 hours into kind of telling people, when you're doing something like this, there's not just the wrestlers involved. There's nearly 200 people involved in what we're doing here. A lot of people needed to know, and we wanted to make sure that when we announced it to the fans, we did it as one voice and be able to say, look, we are picking up this tour and we're moving it over here, and these are the exact dates and the exact locations that the replacement show is going to be, and these are the times, and we want to be able to come out with the full details. So that's why we was, I saw a lot of people saying, how come it's taking you so long to announce this thing? Well, when you're running a thing of this magnitude across that many arenas, and the arenas have all got ticketing vendors and things like that they need to reach out to, Liverpool and Ticketmaster and stuff like that, and even when you tell somebody in Liverpool Arena that Liverpool Echo Arena's got departments all over the place that need to find out about this, that need to then do what they need to do to make the tour day move, and that's why we needed a couple of days really to try and turn that around. Now, that's unfortunate that didn't happen. So the announcement should have been made Friday night really, rather than Thursday. But we ended up having to rush out because people were starting to panic.
Now, first of all, you're quite right. The other day, after I spoke to you and asked if you wanted to come onto this podcast, I did speak to Liverpool Echo Arena, and I did get passed from pillar to post before I actually got to speak to somebody. But we'll get on to that after. On the basis now that you put your tweet out, you had to put it out a little bit earlier. Your status and your tweet about the rescheduling of shows, sorry, not the cancelling of shows. Did you expect the sort of backlash that you received of that? And do you understand why there's a lot of negativity floating around, not just with the fans, but obviously with some of the boys as well, you know, some of the workers?
Hey, listen, I can completely understand when fans and the workers are looking forward to doing something and it gets moved. I completely get that. Likewise, I know a lot of these guys have got, this is their way of making money. So there's nobody likes it when somebody's thinks they're going to do one thing at work and unfortunately it ends up being delayed. Now, that said, when we was telling the boys and particularly the local guys, because it's easier with us, what we've said is, we'll still honour our agreements with you, but we're not going to have a show on that day. So first of all, you've all got a place in the new side of it, but we recognise that that's not the here and now. So to make up for that, we'll give you alternative dates here and now, such as appearances where they can go and do shoot promos for the upcoming thing. We'll pay them the full rates, and we'll let them go do autograph signings and things like that, so that we can try and make it up to some of the fans that was really looking forward to seeing some of these guys. So we've made them kind of offers out to everybody from the UK and from the American guys. We've gone out there and said to them, look, keep us in the loop of when you're over here, and we'll try and tack on some extra dates for promotional purposes to make up for some of this stuff. I have to say, just about 90% of the people, 99% of the people really have come out and said thank you very much. And there's other things that we did as well. So there's some promoters that we work with. You know what it's like when you're bringing in guys. You sometimes partner up with other promoters to bring them in on flights and stuff like that. Even though we're not running shows, we're still going to honour our agreements with the other promoters on that kind of stuff. We've done that across the board. I think there was only one deal that we kind of shied away from, and that was, there was 8 other promoters in on it. It wasn't going to impact anybody's shows, us pulling out, if you know what I mean. Whereas like a deal where there's 2 of you, bring a guy in and he only wants to come if he's going to work 2 days in a row, well then that obviously would impact them. So we've honoured them kind of agreements so that nobody else is impacted. So whilst I can appreciate that some of the boys are going to be disappointed that these are wrestlers, they want to wrestle. They don't want to come and necessarily just do an autograph signing or shoot promos and things like that. But we tried to make the best of a bad situation with these guys, and some of them that haven't worked with us in the past, and some of them that have, they're gonna have mixed reactions. It's bad news to them at this point in time. But I think when people see what comes out of this, and I think that's a different story.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Now, I've said, so you've offered, which is very good of you. You've offered alternative solutions to the UK lads, so that they're not out of pocket. And I'm assuming that most of them are turning you down on that, because a lot of guys have gone on social media and named 5-Star Wrestling quite openly, and so because of the cancellations, they are now looking for other work. So I'm assuming they've not taken you up on your offer because they're looking for other bookings elsewhere.
We've had 1 or 2 guys that didn't want to take us up on the offer, which is completely up to them. But we've had the vast majority of people have been very good about that and said, yeah, absolutely. Okay. A lot of them recognise that we're coming at this, from a position of let's do this, but let's do it right, and let's do it bigger, and let's do it as in the right time to do it. So I think a lot of them realise that that's what's happening, as opposed to. We didn't just come out and say, right, we're cancelling it, screw you, Jack, you're on your own. We said we're rearranging it. And just so you know, we're not the only people to rearrange at all this year. WWE rearranged dates, and I don't just mean the recent date that they rearranged. They rearranged a whole bunch in January and December, and, it's not just down to wrestling that gets rearranged. The hottest act in the world right now, or one of them at least, is Drake. He had a whole tour planned out for January and rearranged it for March. These kind of things happen. It's unfortunate, and we would like them never to happen. And hopefully, we don't have to do this again ever. We would be lynched, I guess, if we did that this time round. But we've put them back into the distance. It's going to significantly improve the show quality. We've got plenty of time to do what we need to do now. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great move overall. I can already there's already been one or two things that we've done backstage that's going to significantly improve the tour. So I can be happy knowing that that's going to be the case from our point of view. I can appreciate completely that fans might not understand that right now because they can't see what's going on. But when they see what happens, roll around February time, well, then they'll understand.
I think one of the problems is, and it's one of the problems that I spoke to Nick Aldis about, and I spoke to Jeff Jarrett about when the whole World of Sport ITV thing kicked off a few weeks back, was you've given no reason. Just like ITV gave no reason for the scheduled summer tapings to be rescheduled, and that was the backlash, because wrestling fans these days, and I'm not just talking British wrestling fans, I'm talking wrestling fans in general from around the world, they expect a certain level of transparency, especially when you are, with the greatest respect to you, Dan, a relative newcomer to the world of promoting wrestling. Fans, I'm not saying that they have the right to know what's going on, but that's what they expect. And when they're not even given a reason or an excuse as to why this heavily hyped tour has been cancelled or rescheduled until later on in the year or beginning of next year, then they're going to make up their own assumptions. And that's what they've done. And there's been a number of different workers and fans tweeting and Facebooking about why they think Five-Star Wrestling are no longer doing this tour. There's a lot of people saying that they already don't think that the tour will take place next year either. Obviously, you're saying that it is, and I hope for your sake and everybody else's sake that it does go ahead. But that, for me, that was the reason with ITV why they got so much backlash, and I think that's why you're getting so much backlash now, is because you're not putting an actual reason out there. So what I'm going to say to you, Dan, is this. This is what I've heard. Now, I've spoken to a couple of your UK roster members. I'm not going to name these guys, but I've spoken because obviously I'm a wrestling promoter. I know a lot of the guys personally. I've also spoke to one of the venues, as I said before. I've spoken direct to the Liverpool Echo. And the reasons that they're giving, there's a couple of reasons. The first one being is that ticket sales are really poor. Is that true?
Well, put it this way. We was ahead of where we were in Dundee, and when we broke the record for Dundee's attendance, we got 2,300 people through the door. So, okay. I mean, it depends what you describe as poor.
Well, basically, that you weren't going to make any money from it. There's a lot of assumptions out there. I've heard stories that you're a rich American kid and you got more money than basically you got all the gear and no idea. That's what's thrown out there. So basically, the ticket sales were not amounting up to the figure that you needed to be able to break even or pull a profit off these shows.
Well, first of all, let me just point out that last year when we ran the tour, in fact, let's go back to Edinburgh, right? We've only run 5 shows, 6 if you count the one that we did with Rev Pro, but that had Andy's experience behind it. If you think about the 5, when we first announced that, hey, we're a new company, and by the way, we're doing Edinburgh Meadowbank, which is a 2,000 plus seat venue, and by the way, we are bringing John Morrison versus Ricochet. We've got Carlito before Carlito started coming over on a fairly regular basis. We've got I'm trying to think who was on there. PJ Black, Marty Skrull, Nick Aldis. The roster was, ODB was on there. It was a heavy import base, but we also had some like 25 UK talents. It's guys that we've brought back time and time again, like Kid Fight, who's been on every show, Joe Coffey, who's been on every show. We had a hell of a lot of big stars for that. Grado was there, and he was really rocking the Scottish scene. He's largely responsible for the success of the Scottish scene. So when we first announced that show, everybody said, "Oh, that's not going to happen." And if you go back before that, when we announced the Wrestling Manager, the video game, everybody said, "That's not going to happen. There's no way these guys are going to come out and do this," and it did. Then we announced the PS3 version of 5-Star, and everybody said the same thing, and it did. And then we announced the PS4 version, same again. At some point in time, that's got to change. Now, I appreciate that. I say that now, and we've manoeuvred this tour way into the distance, so I'm hurting that. the credibility that we were building. But in fairness, we was never getting the credibility anyway. When we announced the tour last year, there was radio podcast after podcast saying, "Don't buy tickets to this event because it will not happen. This company aren't going to run in these arenas. They're not going to put Rey Mysterio versus AJ Styles. There's no way it's going to happen." We had the rosters for them shows was incredibly jam packed. You know, John Morrison, Carlito. Again, we brought a hell of a lot of the guys that was back from Edinburgh. We carried them through because that's what we want to do. We want to build an established roster of guys. You know, we had Rey Mysterio has been on every show that we've done since. And I say every show. We've only done 4 shows since Rey Mysterio joined us, but he's been on them 4 shows, if you know what I mean. And he's going to be on all of the next shows going forward. So what I'm saying is there's bound to be people that come out and say that. And if you look at who some of these people are, some of them are other promoters, which is what it is. You know, promoters are going to do that. It's also hardcore fans of other promotions, which is fine. They like their favourite promotion. They're going to come out and do that. And likewise, it's just a general skeptic. I think that's a British thing, is it not? That we're all a bit... Like, we like to downtrod ourselves until something happens. It's never gonna happen. But then when it happens, it's great. So I think
that is usually the case. I absolutely agree. It's just a very British way. But as I said, I've heard this from 2 of your UK roster members and one of the venues you were set to appear in, that it was put down from you, I assume, that would have made that call or sent that email, or one of your management team. The reason is for poor ticket sales. So this isn't necessarily a case of Britain just being British.
No. Hey, listen, don't get me wrong. The ticket sales weren't flying when we pulled them. There's no getting away from that. The ticket sales was absolutely not flying when we pulled them. In fact, it's safe to say that there was going the other way in some circumstances. But that doesn't mean, hey, listen, when we did Sheffield last year, we did that and people said it's not going to happen, and it did. And if you think we made money on Sheffield, you're wrong. But we did that because we wanted to sign the TV deal. We had reasons, and we got the TV deal. And there's emails going back where we said, look, even before we started booking them shows, if we do this with the kind of guys that we want to do and the kind of way we want to do it, we'll get the TV deal. And everybody said we were crazy at the time, and we wasn't crazy because we went away and we did that. And sometimes people say that you're not going to be able to pull this off, you're not going to do that, and that's because they don't see how you're going to do it. But we've made a habit of going out there and doing it. And like I say, we didn't come out and cancel this. This isn't cancelled. It's pushed back. So that is what it is. We're going ahead with this full speed. You're going to see the posters roll out in the next week or two, and I guess that's a hell of a lot early. We're months and months away, but we've got a hell of a lot of big stars, and we want people to see what's coming. And we're going to be announcing roster member galore going forward, and that's going to be great. We're going to do a lot of promotion for this thing. And the other thing that I hear is that people say, "Oh, well, you guys can't draw." We're on our 5th show. Our 4th show did 2,000 people. Our 5th show did 2,300 people. Every show's done more and more people. Where's this thing that we can't draw?
Well, I think a lot of it comes now. This is me talking now, as well as a portion of the internet community. It's going back to that what the phrase I used before of having all the gear and no idea. Anybody can rock up with a pocket full of money. Now, obviously, I'm assuming because you did laugh, so I'm assuming that you're not this millionaire rich kid from America. You certainly don't sound American. And you said that, growing up, you didn't have a great deal of money, and you've earned your money. You've earned every penny through the 5-star video games. So you've got a pot of money now that you can invest, and you are doing. And the problem is sometimes, and it happens all the time, and you see promotions that'll pop up. They'll throw all this money and they'll bring in all these big import names, and then they'll last half a dozen shows or so, and then they'll disappear because they spent the pot of money. They don't really have an idea of actually how to run a promotion. I can make a phone call now to a dozen US stars that are not in contract with WWE, pay them whatever they want, get them over here, put them in set matches, and roll a few posters out and run a show. Anybody can do that.
Oh, sure.
Where British wrestling fans, they're quite fickle, absolutely they are, and I think they're the first to admit that in most cases, as they expect to see a little bit more than that. Because what you're doing here is, where you're saying that last year people saying, oh, don't go to their shows, they're not going to last. And you did. You went and you did your shows and you made a success. Somewhat, you just said to yourself then, you didn't actually make any money from Sheffield, but you still went out there, you did it, you put on an impressive show, you got all the big American import names on there, mixed in with a few British talents. But then this time around, your shows have been rescheduled. You still haven't actually given a reason yet, Dan. You've said that the ticket sales have not been brilliant, but you haven't actually given the full reason why you've decided to move your tournament around. So when this tournament does move until 2018, do you feel that your ticket sales are going to be, forgetting what Americans you've got lined up or what British talent you've got lined up for these shows with the amendments that you're making, do you feel that you're going to be fighting a losing battle here? Because those people that were saying 12 months ago, look, don't bother with 5-star, they're going to amount to nothing, are now going to be resurfacing and saying, I told you so.
Oh, because the vast majority of people that come to our shows don't give a crap about that podcast. They don't hear that podcast. We're not chasing 400 hardcore wrestling fans here. There's definitely stuff here that the hardcore wrestling fans are going to love, and if they want to come to the shows, they're going to absolutely love them. I mean, like, why wouldn't they? The talent that we're bringing in. But our fans are more mainstream than that, if you like. It's the mums that are buying the tickets for a lot of this. That doesn't mean that we're selling out creativity and stuff like that. We've got a whole lot of really good things that we want to do in the works, but we've put the shows back to make them better. We're going to make them better.
Let me just pause there, Dan. So when you say you're moving them back to make them better, at what point did you realise, and what was it exactly? Did you look at your product now, when you're literally a week or so away from when your shows are due to start, and said, you know what, this is not right, or this element of the show isn't right? What is it you were looking at that you needed to change that forced you to reschedule an entire tour? And we're not talking, I mean, everyone, I do it from time to time. You have no choice. You have to cancel shows for many, many different reasons. And any promoter that says that it's bad business when you cancel a show is pretty much talking out the arse, because they've probably done it themselves, because sometimes you just can't get around that. But we're not talking about a standalone one show here. We're talking about an entire tour. Literally, what was it, a week, 2 weeks before the tour was about to start? What was it that you looked at that made you change your mind about holding this tour?
Steve, I just want to pause you there. Can we just go off the record for 30 seconds here?
Okay.
Right, look.
Into professional wrestling? Of course you are. You're listening to the iSax Wrestling Podcast. Why not turn your passion into profit at wrestling betting? Body slam the bookmakers with the longest running WWE betting tips and prediction site. We cover all bookmakers before each WWE pay-per-view to get the best odds and accumulators, so you don't have to. Sign up for free at wrestlingbetting.co.uk/iSax to get the latest predictions delivered straight to your inbox. That's wrestlingbetting.co.uk/iSax. Check us out today.
Right, pause, stop. Okay, as I said, this is the bit where I was just getting into that question. It was on the tip of my tongue, right there, bursting to get out of my lips, and bang! Just off the echo for 30 seconds, Steve. Now, I could have taken that literal, Daniel, and I didn't, therefore you owe me one. I could have literally cut it for 30 seconds. And I could have let the whole world hear what an absolute piece of shit you actually are, but I'm not going to. And it really, really grates on me that I am actually protecting you here, and I do not wish nor want to protect you, Daniel, but I'm going to, because morally I'm the better man. But I'm going to protect you here. What is discussed is for Daniel's ears and my ears only until such time that Daniel says otherwise, okay? I'm going to keep the content. It's locked away somewhere safe. Nobody's going to get access to it other than me. Ever. Unless I am given consent from Daniel Hinkles or a representative of 5-Star Wrestling that I am allowed to put it public to set the record straight. But as I said before, stick around. The second part of this interview There's a lot more interesting than how Daniel Hinkle's failed in wrestling training, failed to become a wrestler, therefore thought it would be easy to become a professional wrestling promoter. So this podcast is long enough, I'm not going to babble on. This is the cut, this is the pause that you asked for. Daniel Hinkle's, it's back to you.
CM Punk, that was a little bit controversial, because what you were ultimately doing was advertising that you had offered CM Punk $1 million. That's fine. If you've got that sort of crazy money to throw around on one guy, then that's fine. The vast majority, actually no, I would say 100% of the responses I've seen to that Daily Star feature was that it was a publicity stunt, and that's all it was. That CM Punk would never consider that. You even put in the paper that you didn't even know if he was. Or no, it wasn't the paper. Sorry, it may have been on your personal Facebook account that I saw it. That you don't even know if he's seen the offer, let alone considering the offer. That's like putting CM Punk on your posters.
After.
Sorry.
He tweeted about the offer 10 minutes after.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I've not seen it. I went onto your personal Facebook account, and on one of your statuses you'd put, you don't even know if he's considering it. So, but he wasn't going to turn up to that show. Nobody thought he was going to turn up to that show, and a lot of people, and myself included, feel that that's like putting CM Punk on your poster and then him not being there on the night. That you were trying to sell tickets off the back of somebody that was never going to be there.
Up to that show?
Well, because just as a wrestling fan, forget the promoter, as a wrestling fan, I know there's only one show that CM Punk would work, because he's made it apparent openly, publicly, so many times that it's not about the money. If it was about the money, he'd still be at the WWE now. It's not about that. So somebody's offered him $1 million.
He also said that he was wrestling through and through and would never leave wrestling for something else, and then went to UFC. People say stuff. The Rock said he'll never go back to wrestling, and then went and headlined 3 WrestleManias. That people say.
But again, there's a big difference between UFC, WWE, and Hollywood than 5-star wrestling.
Yeah, sure, but there isn't a difference between $1 million that WWE are paying him and $1 million that I'm paying him.
No, that's true. That's true. But the difference is, go on.
Like WWE is suing them. Now, I agree, by the way, that I think that there's every chance he just goes back to like all the shit that you hear, that he's fallen out with Colt Cabana, that he's never going to go back to WWE. Of course, he's going back to WWE. Of course he is. He'll go back to WWE just like The Rock went back to WWE, just like everybody does. He's going back for his big payday, and CM Punk did nothing but say to everybody in the entire world, I hate these part-timers and all this kind of stuff, and he's going to go back to be one, and that's what's going to make him a great heel when he goes back after he's been a babyface to start with, and he'll go do it, and he'll work 4 or 5 WrestleManias, he'll work 1 day a year and clean up. And I've no doubt about that. But let's just for 1 second take the man at his word that he can't stand WWE. That's what's out there. They're suing him. He never wants to work for Vince again. Nobody else in the world's offering him $1 million. Why can't I offer him $1 million, and why wouldn't he accept?
No, you can offer him $1 million, and you did offer him $1 million on the national newspaper. The fact that you made that offer in the newspaper when there was no correspondence before then.
I tried to do it correspondence before then. I'd tried emailing him a bunch of times. I'd talked to guys like Colt Cabana and said, hey, can you get me with him? I'd sent an offer through John Morrison, but the offer had never been as big as $1 million. And by the way, when you try and send an offer through the boys don't like doing that. They don't like going to a guy like CM Punk, because every promoter in the world's gone to him with an offer.
Well, of course they don't. It's like saying to Johnny Morrison, whatever you're paying him, here you go, Johnny, is your 4K. And next time you see Punk, would you mind asking him if he'd come and work for me for $1 million?
Yeah, of course, exactly.
You're pissing all over the chips of John Morrison and anybody else you're asking to pass that message on.
I agree, and that's why I went out publicly. Because I don't know the man, don't have his phone number, can't just ring him up and ask him. But I have tried to do it many times before, and $1 million, I don't care who says what in the world, is $1 million. And by the way, if he came to the negotiation table, there'd have been more than $1 million. He just didn't come. He never. The tweet that he put out was in response to a fan that said, I'll give you 1.1 million to go get a hoagie on a pole match, which is a sandwich in America. And he said, sweet, I'll have the hoagie on a pole match. I want half the hoagie now in advance. and then he posted a picture of Scrooge McDuck diving in and out of his gold. So he'd seen the thing and never even responded. Can you believe that? I mean, I can't believe that. I can't believe he never...
Do you seriously think... Well, first of all, a couple of parts to this question. Have you heard of CM Punk?
No.
So he hasn't accepted, but he hasn't declined the offer?
No.
Right, okay.
And I will still pursue, by the way.
Okay. So do you seriously think that you were going to pay him $10 million to do... Was it one show or the 10-week tour?
No, it was the 30-week tour. I'm paying him to come and do the tour. I ain't going to say how many dates, because I don't know how many dates the man wants to work.
Right.
We'd have to work that out between us.
So if he come back to you and said, okay, well, I'll take that $1 million, because the way that I took it, and I take it that most other people took it, was that you're offering him $1 million to come back and do one more show. If he said to you, you know what, I'll take that $1 million, fuck Vince, fuck WWE, I'll come work for you for $1 million, I'm doing one show. Would you have taken that?
For one show, that'd have been rough. I don't know. I would have had to have talked. Let me tell you this.
So on that basis, on that basis, you knew, even if he came across and did the 10-week tour, or even a 30-week tour for $1 million, did you expect that you'd actually make profit off that $1 million? And that's just $1 million aside of all the other costs.
Are you kidding me? I've got £8 million worth of tickets to sell, mate.
Right. Okay. But you actually think that you would have so you're saying that you would have absolutely made profit off that?
I know full well I would have. I know full well because I was on the front of sponsors about it. You don't think I'm coming at this? Listen, my business is my business in that area, right? I raised $1 million. Go look this up. I've raised $1 million for Serious Party to build video games, right? I've made more than that. Sorry, I've raised fortunes. Can I make money out of CM Punk if he comes on my shows? Of course I can. I'm running Manchester Arena twice this year. That's a 21,000 seat venue. Am I saying that I'm selling Manchester Arena out on that? I don't know. If we've got a 30-week build-up with the kind of exposure that I'm reckoning we're going to have, based on what I know, I don't see why we wouldn't. I don't see why we wouldn't make profit. And nobody can tell me that we couldn't make profit, because if we so much as half sold all of the venues, which is perfectly acceptable for us to do, half selling, when you consider that when we did Dundee with about a month's worth of promotion, we got 2,300 through the door, and that was before we started putting out any video content or any proper marketing. Of course, I reckon we can build them numbers up. There's a ton of fans in this country, don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And would you imagine that CM Punk, if we built him for 30 weeks, and put him in the tournament even, so he only had to do 10 dates to get to the final? Don't you think that final anyway, considering it's going to have had 30 weeks of promotion, don't you think the final's got a chance of selling out?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, the final, yeah. But that's what my issue here is. That you're only going to be putting them on. You're only going to be putting them on. He's not going to be on every single one of your shows, and for you to make that sort of money back, you need him on every one of his shows. But on the flip side, he's not going to work every single one of your shows for $1 million.
He wouldn't need to. But by the way, you don't know that, and I don't know that. And I'll tell you why you don't know that, because he took $500,000 to go work at UFC, and if you think that was for one night, you're forgetting that he had to work 2 years before that, did a 6-part documentary, and did nothing but train night and day for 2 years for it. That was for $500,000. And this is a guy that when he left WWE, went on Colt Cabana's podcast and bitched because he got offered something like 20 grand to go do a trailer or something, and WWE wouldn't let him. I can't remember the details on that. You have to look at Colt Cabana's post. But he went and he said, WWE wouldn't let me do this to earn 20 grand in one night, and that was 20 grand for one night. Well, I'd be paying him more than that if you think about it. Now, all I'm saying is if there's any promoter in the world who's running the kind of size of shows I am, there's two that I know of. There's WWE. Sorry, there's three. WWE, TNA, and New Japan's Big Show, right? Because New Japan's Big Show takes place in a massive venue. It's like Tokyo Dome's huge, yeah? I don't know of any other... I mean, there might be tons for all I know. But I don't know. Like, at Ring of Honor shows, for example, they're what, in front of 1,000 people? They can't afford to pay that kind of money.
You're comparing yourself here to the biggest wrestling giants in the world. You know when I said about everyone in the bubble,
Yes.
What's the maximum attendance you've ever had in one of your shows?
2,350 people.
That's
That was all
I mean that's very impressive for Britain. That's very impressive. It's nowhere near New Japan or WWE.
Of course it's not. Of course it's not. But like you've just said to me a second ago, you just said with 30 weeks promotion leading up to of shows building up to it, you think we could sell out our final?
Your final, yes. If you had CM Punk leading up to that final, yeah.
Well, that final's a
actually, no. You know what? I say yes. I say that very loosely. Actually, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if CM Punk 2-3 years ago. Yeah, I'd absolutely say yeah.
You don't think CM Punk's a bigger draw now than when he left?
No, do a fuck. No, I think people have turned on him. I think people have. At first, it was like the Austin thing when Austin left. That you got so used to him being there, and he was so unique and different that you wanted him back. People have moved on then.
Did you see what happened to me on Twitter? And this happened to me, by the way. And this is what I mean by people are out there trying to twist the knife. And when the other night, before any of this stuff happened, a post went out on Twitter by a fake account, completely.
Yes, I did see that. Yeah.
Not my account. My account wasn't hacked. This wasn't a case of a promoter saying, "Oh, my account was hacked," when he'd done it himself. This was a full fake account. He had more followers on that fake account than I've got on any of our social media feeds. I don't know how they get 30,000 followers on a fake account, but he did. And he posted about the CM Punk thing. The second he posted that, ticket sales flew. And I mean flew. And flew faster than anything that I've ever experienced. To the point where, if I'd have left it up overnight, I reckon would have probably sold out a couple of the venues straight off the gate. That's how powerful CM Punk is right now.
Would you, if that had happened, obviously it would be under false pretenses, but if that had happened, would you carried on doing the shows? Or would you still pull them?
Well, we'd have had to have refunded all them tickets anyway. We offered the people that bought them tickets in that space the refund, and some of them was kind enough to say, no, we'll stay and do a normal ticket rather than a VIP ticket and stuff like that.
Okay.
So we would never have done that under false pretenses, because that's ridiculous. Like you can't go have some. That's why we took it down straight away. If you look, within like half an hour of it going up, I'd made the post saying this isn't true and all the rest of it. There's no way we would have let that go the way it did. That would have ruined us completely. So, and what I'm getting at, because we've kind of gone miles away from where we was, is that with CM Punk, we could have made money out of him, no doubt. And what you've got to factor in for me, by the way, is that I sell video games in 80 countries. So tell me that a video game with Rey Mysterio and CM Punk ain't gonna break me money.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about video games here. I respect what you've done in video games. I'm talking about live wrestling shows is a completely different kettle of fish.
I appreciate that you are, but what I'm saying to you, what you think that I'm offering a guy $1 million and I'm not going to say to him, look, we want to be able to license you for this as well.
Okay.
I've got more ways of making money out of this than you might realise. But that's anyway. Listen, I didn't want to even get on any of that stuff. We started. The reason we paused the tape there was because I wanted you to understand that the reasons that I don't want to put it out into the public of what's gone on, and I think you do somewhat understand.
I do understand. Now you've explained it from a business perspective. I understand. I just don't agree that you're going about it the right way because those rumours are not going to go away.
Right, but can we at least agree that should be my decision, though? Yeah.
Absolutely, it should be your decision. It should be your decision. Yeah, but I mean, you must have known that it was going to get raised on this podcast. I don't know if you've done any podcasts since the announcement of the rescheduled tour, but
this is the only one that I've taken, and I took it because I could see from your responses, what you was posting out on Facebook, that you were interested, as opposed to somebody that just wanted to bury it.
Yeah, I have no interest in pointing fingers at all. I was interested to hear what I was going to ask the questions, of course I was, and I have done. You've given me your honest response, and I think that your response it's a business savvy response is what it is. You're doing what's right for your business, But I don't think you're experienced enough in this wrestling business. Again, let's forget about the video games. You're obviously very successful in that, and you do very, very well. But in the wrestling business, I don't think you're that experienced enough where you're making the right decisions. And another bit of advice I will give you regarding talent: don't always listen to talent. They will do what's best for them.
I agree, and I've experienced that. Obviously, I mean, I experienced the other night when I told Joe Coffey that we were doing this. I was still talking to him as he tweeted. Now, in Joe's credit, the second that he tweeted, it pinged on my phone and said Joe Coffey's mentioned 5-Star Wrestling, and I told him to take it down, and he took it down straight away. To his credit, but that's how quick that happened. I said, Joe, we're going to have to cancel this because of these reasons, and we weren't talking on the phone. We was talking over Facebook because I tried to call him at 10 in the morning and left a voicemail message, and he didn't get back to me. So I had to send him a message because I was like, look, this is going to have to break. And he messaged me, in fact, to say I've already heard from someone else that this is happening. So he was angry when he heard that because he'd heard it from someone else. I'd left him the message to call me, but he didn't. And the rumour mill being what it is that. So he ran straight out to Twitter and tweeted that. And as soon as he did that, Graham Fisher or something or other, or I don't know what the guy's. There's a guy that's just, he must have already put 150 tweets into this. And it's because he's associated with the Liverpool promotion that are obviously running shows, and they want to sell the tickets off the back of this. And so, look, 5 stars, fuck you over, come to our local promotion, yeah. And I get that. But that's how that started kicking up into a media storm. Because Joe tweeted that out.
I will say this as well, you keep mentioning Joe.
I mentioned Joe because he put the tweet out.
Right.
It wasn't until then, because I was scouring the net every, half an hour I was on the net trying to find out if somebody had leaked it some way, shape or form. We managed to keep it a secret for 24 hours nearly. And obviously, I took that as hey, look, the vast majority of the boys are on board here to get how important this is, and it was a very quick reaction that Joe posted out, and he didn't post any too much in detail, to be fair. But then he went to his Facebook page and posted that he was free on dates, and then people started piecing it together. And I think that's a real shame that he did that. I'm not holding that against Joe, by the way. I'll gladly work with Joe down the line, and he might not want to work with us anymore. He's worked for us on all 5 shows, and I hope he'll continue to do so. But that's how the story broke online, and it shouldn't have broke online like that. It shouldn't, and that's as soon as that happened, boys started feeling like they could start putting stuff online because journalists and people were tweeting about it already. So it started looking like it was out in the air, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
So that was regretful, but that was 10:30 on Wednesday night. Now, to put that in a perspective of the timeline, whereabouts is the news in terms of telling the production team, telling everybody? I'm still trying to get through all the phone calls to tell people, because it should be me that tells them, right? I'm the guy that's booking them. They should hear it from me directly.
Yeah.
So, and I tried to be that guy. I tried to, and whenever you see a story from the likes of TNA that have gone out and just blanket announced it, and the talent come out and say, "Oh, well, we never heard this," I used to think that was diabolical of Impact to go and do that kind of stuff. And now I'm going, well, would I have just been better doing that? I don't know, because if it's a shame because there's 3 or 4 guys that ended up causing the kind of shitstorm that it caused. I would have had a shitstorm either way, don't get me wrong, but we could have been more on our terms, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Listen, this has obviously gone completely off the rails. How about we reshoot this and we come up with a better way of approaching the sensitive question, if you like?
Well, as promised, that is it. That is the Daniel Hinkle's 5-Star Wrestling interview. Obviously not in its entirety, as I would have liked to bring to you, but as explained at the opening of this podcast, he did throw in his ace card of the off the record. I didn't do what I could have done. He did say off the record for 30 seconds. I was very tempted to just literally cut it for 30 seconds and throw the rest up there, allow him to bury himself. But I think he pretty much did that anyway. But I want to get a bit of feedback from somebody else. So I've asked a good friend of mine, you know him from previous episodes of the ISAX podcast. He is Michael R. Holland. I'm going to bring Mike on right now, and he's the only person that I sent this podcast out to listen to the edited version. The only person that's listened to the unedited is myself, because I gave my word to Daniel Hinkle that it would remain private and confidential until such time that he tells me that he's happy for that to be released. But let's be honest, given the content that was actually missed out, I doubt that's ever going to happen, but you never know. But Mike, it's good to have you with me today. You've listened to this edited version. Let's jump straight into it, man. It's a very long podcast, so we're going to keep this bit short and sweet, but what were your thoughts on the podcast that you've just listened to, which, if you will also confirm for the listeners, was the edited version? You have not heard the full version?
Yes, no matter how much I badgered Steve, he would not let me have the unedited version. I did want to listen to it, and I didn't get this chance to. I have only listened to the edited version of the podcast, so I've listened to basically whatever, I've listened to what the public are going to be listening to. And from what I've just listened to, I mean, as a podcast fan, it was interesting. It was definitely worth a listen. But I don't know, personally, I didn't like the answers that I heard. I don't like the fact that one of the bigger questions was, why is the tour being pulled? What is the reason for the tour being pulled? And he skated around the answer, and then when he finally didn't have enough cards to play, because he basically played every card that he could play without giving the real answer, and then when it came down to giving the real answer, he doesn't give the real answer to the public. He bottled it. I just feel like, there's got to be a sense of transparency in the wrestling business. That has been for years now. The internet, it opened up the wrestling business completely, and social media now, and everyone's talking. You've got to get yourself out in front of these situations, and I don't feel like Dan's done this. I feel like he's just skirted around the issue and just basically pissed a lot of people off, really. Yeah, I mean, he's pissed a lot of people off, of course, yes, because the tour was cancelled. There's a lot of guys that were out of pocket because of obviously he had a lot of dates set up. On paper, it looked like, let's go back to basics here. He had 5 good shows, made a bit of money, made a lot of noise, got some big American names over, used a lot of great British talent, and if the tour had gone ahead, 5-Star Wrestling could have been in a completely different division in the British Wrestling Leagues, if you like, but it didn't. And the problem is that I've never met the guy. This is the first time I've ever spoke to the guy. You've never met him, Mike. You never spoke to him. Nothing other than this podcast, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. So he expected these guys that he'd suddenly said, look, here are your, whatever were, 11, 15, 20 dates for this tour. We're no longer doing them. Here's the reason why. But please don't say anything to anybody. Now, these guys have gone straight on social media because it's 2017. That's what they do. They go on social media because they're unhappy, because they're trying to fill up all those 11, 15, 20 dates, whatever the case may be, because it's their living. And he expected that they would be loyal to him. They worked 5 shows for this guy, or a maximum of 5 shows for this guy. I've got guys that have worked for me for the past 10 years who I know that they're not 100% loyal. That's the nature of the business, right? And right, this whole thing, right? Yeah, you're talking about loyalty, and loyalty. Yeah, it's a great commodity to have, but at the end of the day, this is a business. These guys are out there wrestling. You've got guys out there who are on these shows who are wrestling every day of the week because that's their money. That's where they earn their living. They feed themselves, their partners, their kids off the fact that they can go out there and earn. And when someone offers you 20 dates, you go, right, well, there you go, that's fine. That's fantastic. That's me sorted for a good chunk of time there. That's guaranteed stability in a household. And then for him to just whip that away and then go, oh, but go ahead, don't say nothing. Well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Guys need to be straight away. They're like, right, okay, well, I just lost 20 dates. Now I need to fill those 20 dates. Now, you and I both know, and anyone who's ever promoted a wrestling show will know, that when you try and book your cards up as far in advance as possible, so that you can advertise, so that you can guarantee that you've got, you want a guy for your show, you go out and get him. You want bubblegum for your show, you don't email him the week of your show and go, hey mate, any chance you come down to this show? because he's in high demand. I just use Bubblegum as an example, which is the first guy to pop into my head, but it's, you don't just go at these guys and say, right, okay, yeah, next week can you do a show? No, you need to have all this sorted in advance. Same with the guys, guys who are doing this for a living want to make sure that they've got guaranteed money coming in every single week, every single day. And if you just take that up their mouths and expect them to just sit quietly and wait, it's not going to happen. These guys need to be out there making their money, so of course they're going to go on social media, and of course people are going to go, oh, well, hang on a minute, isn't that all the dates that 5-star had you for? Oh, well, obviously they've dropped it for some reason, then people are going to start talking.
Of course they are. Now, it's like any other business, any other industry, Mike. If you're a painter and decorator and you've got your next 12 months booked up for jobs, and then suddenly your 2 weeks in August that you had a $2,000 job pulls out because they don't want the work done anymore, then you've got to go out there immediately and you've got to find a new job to fill that gap, because you've got bread and butter to put on the table for your family. This is no different. These guys went to social media immediately, as you said. They said, now I've got this date to this date set out now that they're available, that previously weren't available, and the fans instantly have looked on at those dates and went, hold on, they are the 5-star dates, something's obviously happened with 5-star. So we can't blame the talent for going out there immediately and trying to refill their diary and their schedule.
No, of course you can't. The issue's not even really that, is it? This isn't the issue that's got people wound up, that's got people riled up. It's the thing that, the off-the-record 30 seconds, Stephen, it's that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm not at liberty to say anything about that, Mike, you know this. I'm not going to, unless he challenges me, and you know what, I really hope he does challenge that. I hope that he listens to this podcast. I hope that he listens to it and then tries again to dig himself out of another hole by saying, basically, I want him to call me a bullshit. I want him to say that I have edited this to make him sound bad, because Daniel Hinkle's, I would love nothing more to throw up onto iTunes the full unedited version of our interview that lasted in excess of over 2 hours, to the point where I had to stop it because it was going on too long. I want you to challenge me so I can put this out there, because every British wrestler deserves to know why I personally think that they should not work for you in 5-star wrestling. Every British wrestling fan deserves to know why I personally feel that they should not pay for a ticket to go and see 5-star wrestling.
Well, as you said, Steve, you're not allowed to, you're not allowed to talk about about the alleged reason for why the shows have been cancelled, but I can.
That's true.
I didn't make agreements with them.
That's very true, yes.
Obviously, allegedly, the reason is to do with the Manchester terror attacks. Was that he has pulled the show due to the fallout of the Manchester terror attacks. That was the reason that certain members of his roster were given, allegedly. Obviously I wasn't in the room, I wasn't there, I'm not hacking into Facebook to check messages, but allegedly this is what has been said, is that they were told that due to the Manchester terror attacks the show was being pulled. Now, do you know what, to an extent it makes sense. If you're going to pull your Manchester show, pull your Manchester show. If you don't want to do the show in Manchester, that's absolutely fine. Pull the Manchester show if you don't feel safe. But what about the rest of your shows? What are you just now immediately like, right, okay, so since now there's been one terror attack, there may be a terror attack at every single show that we have. This is, I honestly, this is the day, this is the world we live in, and no one else has pulled shows. Shows have been pushed back, shows have been rescheduled, but no one's pulled a bunch of shows. Now he's obviously saying he's going to reschedule these shows. Well, we don't know dates. He's not said, right, okay, we're going to reschedule them for X, Y, Z. He's not giving us any information.
One pocket of information I can say that was included in the off-the-record conversation that we had is that the rescheduling is supposed to take place in February next year. Sorry. Now, obviously, up until a few days ago, I was kind of sat back and thought, well, there's been no news yet, and it's coming up. If a tour of that size and magnitude should be started advertising around about now, September, October. But then the news did break that Free Sports UK are going to be showing 5-star wrestling, so maybe that's what he was kind of aiming towards without being able to say anything for legal reasons or whatever, I don't know. So there are dates out there now. Well, there's no dates out there, but there's news that they are going to be on TV, so they're going to have to produce some dates, and they're going to have to get some shows going ready for when they go live on TV.
Okay, well this leads me to another point though. The sorry, is it Free Sport Wrestling?
Free Sport UK.
Right, never heard of them.
No, I do believe they are quite a new TV network. But I have seen quite a lot of news popping up about all the different sorts of sports they're going to be showcasing.
Right, well, my gripe, I would say, is this: there are far better wrestling companies out there in the UK showcasing proper British talent in the right way, right? Who Free Sport Wrestling could have reached out to. Now they've only reached out to 5 Star because 5 Star has, as you said last night. Not last night, sorry. As you said, it's because I listened to the podcast last night. As you said on the podcast, you threw around the term all the gear, no idea. And obviously they've seen that he has all the gear, and they've just took him on face value with that, right? But that again, I did want to make a little point about towards yourself about the all the gear, no idea comment that you made, because I think that is a special breed of this. Personally, in British wrestling, there's been a lot of guys who've gone, right, okay, we get a ring, we get some guys, we get some money, and we can do this, right? And I've had no idea what they're doing, right? Some guys who literally have been fans have now got into this business and started actually making a real noise, a real buzz. Because it can be done now, but these guys are real proper fans, guys who love the business so much that they do want to be in it in any way possible. I mean, you talk about guys who started out who had nothing to do with the wrestling business other than being a fan. I mean, you're talking about Steve Flugger, who's now celebrating his 5th anniversary this year,
something like that, yeah,
like that, and he's still going strong. And anything personal aside, you've got to respect that he is still going strong.
Absolutely. From a business point of view, I can't knock Steve Fludder. Personally, that's a different story, but I don't tell you straight away. I'm sure you're going to say guys like Jay Apter, TNT Wrestling, a complete wrestling mark, and he's turned that into... he hasn't just followed... The thing I like about Jay and TNT Extreme Wrestling, is that he hasn't just followed the natural course of British wrestling as a British wrestling fan. He's kind of done his own little thing with it. It's kind of... It's not unique, but it's different to what British wrestling fans are used to.
He's got a niche market there that he can he's cornered that niche market in the northwest, and it's perfect. I mean, Jay's doing so well, and I don't like the fact that he used the term mark, because I hate the term mark. It's become so derogatory. It's such a derogatory term towards fans, and as you say, Jay started out, he was a big fan of wrestling, and he wanted to get involved, and he could get involved, and he did, and he's done so well. Another one as well, Peter Blackham over at Wrestle Island.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pete started out. He's got a shop. He made a bit of dough off that, and decided he wanted to put a wrestling show on, and he's done it. And everyone I speak to now about these shows is saying nothing but positive things. Like, Pete's fantastic to work for. The guys are having a great time working the shows. I mean, this is what we want. More guys out there who will make a noise in a positive way. You say all the gear, no idea. Well, these guys may have started out that way, but they've learned. And they know from being a wrestling fan what wrestling fans want to see.
I suppose that's the difference. Let's have a look straight away at TNT and Wrestle Island. What's the difference between them and 5 Star? First of all, they haven't got a shitload of money behind them. They have literally started off like I did. Okay, I was involved in the wrestling business for 10 years before I started BWP, Britannia Wrestling. But I had no money. I started from the bottom, started from scratch, and slowly, over the past 10 years, I've built away at what is now a reputable wrestling company within the UK. Wrestle Island and TNT have both done the same thing. They started at the bottom, they started at the absolute bare bones of wrestling, and they slowly chipped away to the point where now they're getting recognition, rightful recognition. 5 Star have gone in with a big pocket full of money, a video game to advertise, a guy who's obviously got a massive ego, thinks he's the Vince McMahon of British wrestling, who actually compared his company that has run 5 shows to the big leagues on global wrestling. He compared himself to Ring of Honor, New Japan, WWE.
I mean, there was the way he said that, actually, that kind of riled me a bit, the way he went, oh yeah, we'll be competing with, New Japan on their big venues, what like New Japan on their small venues aren't doing better than you, mate.
Exactly. He's come in thinking he's Vince McMahon, whereas these other guys, like Jay and myself and Pete and so many others as well that are set up around the UK now, we're humble to the business, we're respectful to the business and to the workers and to the fans. This dickhead doesn't seem to be doing that. And that's why, I've said it before and I'll say it again, British wrestling fans are a fickle bunch, and make them happy, they'll be the most loyal, dedicated, loudest fans you've ever had. Make them unhappy and they will just fucking turn on you like that. And that's exactly what they've done. But, all that aside, ego aside, money aside, whether he thinks he's the second coming of Vince McMahon or not, it's, like you said, allegedly, we all saw certain tweets, we all saw certain Facebook statuses about the reasons that he gave us his talent and his venues for cancelling the tour early on in the year. I'm not going to confirm, I'm not going to deny these allegations, but they're out there. If you want to go and find them yourself, if you haven't already seen them, you can still find them, they're out there. It was just, if they were true, and if that's what the reason was that his tour was cancelled, then that's a massive reason for the British wrestling fans and wrestlers to turn around and give him a massive kick in the balls and say, mate, we do not want you a part of this industry. You are not welcome in British wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a completely 100% legitimate reason, that's fine, but, I mean, I've listened to this podcast, and I'm sure certain people will be asking the same kind of questions, but he says that the tickets were flying out beforehand, that he was selling really well. Well, where's the proof of this?
Does he really need to give proof? I mean, I've said this before as well, Mike, that, I'm not defending the guy. I think, I've sat on this interview for so long, and I kind of go back and forth in my own head about, maybe I can understand a little bit, from a business savvy point of view, I can understand, but then the more I listen to it, the more it just winds me up, and I'm like, no, this guy really tried to work me, he's trying to work the listeners, he's trying to work his own fans, his own wrestlers, his own staff, he's trying to work the venues, he's just a con man, that's all I can put it down to, and I do not like him. I've never met him, I hope one day I will meet him, but from the conversation that I've listened to timeless times, I don't like him, he's a con man. And we need less. This business and this industry has always been built up on blaggers and dodgy characters. Like it or not, it's true. He just takes that to the next level.
In a way, it's like I say, he's a relic. As well as not being part, he's a relic of this business. He's something that people don't want associated with this anymore, and it's people who'll just blag your head. I mean, we've all seen promoters who've popped up and gone, oh yeah, I can do this show, and then they've offered, they'll offer a date, and then they'll do one show doesn't go well, they don't bother with another one. We've seen it in the past. This is it on a massive scale. On a scale of where you're affecting some of the bigger names in the UK. I mean, that was one of the things, like, not really. No one really moaned about it. No one's really complained. 99% of the guys have been quite understanding about it. Does he understand how percentages work? Because I'm pretty sure the majority of the UK guys, the guys who would be here in the country, were guaranteed to work all his dates, not his imports. I mean, I know what you said about imports is very correct. The UK has been built up on a mixture of strong UK talent and imports bringing the crowds in for that talent to be showcased in front of. I don't deny that that's a fantastic business acumen that we've been doing for years. But at the end of the day, everyone's got to learn now that because British wrestling is in the forefront of the scene, everyone's looking at the UK at the moment when it comes to wrestling. Shikara just did their King of Trios in the UK. Ring of Honor have more tours over here. New Japan guys are coming over here to work, and we've got obviously we're exporting some of the bigger names in the world at the moment. Zack Sabre Jr., Will Ospreay, Marty Scurll, just to name 3 guys that we're sending on the indies to other places. Anything like this now, it makes all of us look bad.
It does.
It makes every fan, promoter, worker, everyone who's involved in the business whatsoever, it makes us all look bad, because it's on such a big scale to drop the ball in such a way.
Yeah.
Do you know what? If you'd have managed to, if you'd have pulled this off, pulled this tour out, I mean, the 128-man tournament, was that what it was?
Yeah.
128 man, I mean, that's fucking huge, right? And he's right. If nothing like that has ever been done in wrestling, nothing like that's ever been done in wrestling, because it sounds near on fucking impossible. And to keep people like interested in something that big is going to be a struggle. But if you managed to pull that off, that would have been impressive.
If you could have pulled off that tournament where the final stages would have led up to this new TV deal that he's got. So get the UK behind you, or get the. It's not, you know what? It's even when you're putting on a wrestling show now in the UK. It's not just the UK you're pandering to. It's the world. It's out there. It's YouTube, or even BWP have got their own little, on-demand service. It's out there for the world. So you could have put that long-ass tour, which you would have been, the tournament, sorry, as it would have been. The earlier stages you could have put on the live UK tour, but then the final stages could have been what could have kick-started his TV career.
Well, as you said yourself, BWP has its own on-demand service now where you can get like BWP footage. Now, I love BWP. I've been a part of BWP for nearly 10 years, same as you. But BWP is not on a huge scale of like worldwide. A worldwide audience would be looking at it, like 5 Star was at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
5 Star was making so much noise, banging on that fucking drum. Look at us! Look at us! Look at us! We looked, and then he went, "Oh shit! Stop looking!"
Yeah.
Stop looking for that. But look back later. Yeah, but look back when I'm sorted. No, you're right. But as you said, BWP has a streaming service. Why wouldn't he just set something up like that where you can go, boom, here you go. Like, give me a $5 a month, and you can have all this stuff, all the footage that apparently he's sitting on now. Put all this footage out there. You've got it. Use it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's difficult, but yeah, we can't really talk too much about his reasons for cancelling this tour. It's out there. People know what it is, but we can't really touch on that too much. So very quickly, Mike, the other points that you raised, the whole CM Punk issue. What was your take on that? Do you think he legitimately expected A, for Punk to get back to him, B, for Punk to accept the offer, and C, do you think these tours, given you mentioned before that one of the reasons put out there publicly that the tour was cancelled allegedly was because something to do with the Manchester bombings, allegedly. If Punk had agreed, do you think that would have made a difference to his decision to pull the tour?
I think it would have made a huge difference. I mean, CM Punk would have been a massive get. I mean, as you said, you were saying that, oh yeah, CM Punk's not the draw that he was. Maybe not with the hardcore wrestling fans, because most of them just get on with it, get past it, and most of them just got, they've got a bit jaded by CM Punk, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, he would definitely have made a lot of money off CM Punk. The issue in my head is, I haven't checked this. I probably should have checked this before we talked about this. But is CM Punk not a contracted UFC fighter?
That I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to say no. Actually, I don't think he is anymore. I don't think he's actually a contract. He's on a contract basis. He may be, affiliated with him, but I don't think he's actually under contract with him. But I may be wrong.
But he's not going to just drop doing what he said he was quitting. He was doing UFC. Now, if you're a fan of CM Punk, you're going to go, oh well, CM Punk, he says he's going to do stuff. He said he was going to win the world title. He won the world title. He said he was going to leave. He left. He said he's going to fight in UFC. So obviously he's going to fight again in UFC. Yeah, his fans are going to get behind him. That's what they're going to believe. So why would they believe he's going to come and do a show in Newcastle?
So the one thing that I kind of, after listening to you back, I disagree with myself, to be honest with you. I said at the time with Daniel that there's only one company Punk could work for, and I referred to him that was going to be WWE. And you and I have had the conversation in the past privately, where that's probably not the case. There isn't one company he'd probably go and work for now, and that's probably New Japan.
I think Punk, no, I don't think it'd be one. I think it'd be two. I think if he was so inclined to go back and wrestle, I don't think he wants to. I think he's made out from everything he's ever said. I mean, I don't know the guy. I'm just a fan. You know what I mean? But he's made out from everything he's ever said on on any interviews or podcasts and things like that. He's very disenchanted with wrestling. He's fell out of love with the business, right? So he's not going to want to go and wrestle again anytime soon. But if he did, and obviously he's not going to want to go back to WWE because of everything that's gone on. He's, they're both, both parties are not happy, so that's not going to happen. Soz, kids, but it's not. If he was to go back and wrestle, he'd be in Ring of Honor.
Yeah, Ring of Honor or New Japan, I reckon. Yeah.
It wouldn't be a case of or.
Yeah, of course, these days,
Because Ring of Honor and New Japan have that very close working relationship at the moment. A lot of cross-promotion, a lot of joint shows through the year. CM Punk would, as one of the guys who basically helped build Ring of Honor, at the foundation, he was just one of the first guys on one of the first shows. So, obviously, I think if he was going to go back to wrestling, he has a home forever in Ring of Honor. And I know he's been, the Young Bucks, Nick and Matt Jackson, I've mentioned many times, like interviews and Q&As and things, like you could bring in anyone for Bullet Club. Like the only guy they would want, other than Hulk Hogan, because they said that was just hilarious if Hulk Hogan was part of Bullet Club. But other than Hulk Hogan, the only other guy in wrestling who would fit the group perfectly, like a bigger guy, would be CM Punk.
Yeah. I can't see Hulk Hogan going right. He'd have to fucking get too much of his own shit in when he wouldn't be for the Bullet Club, he'd be the Brother Club.
Yeah, the Brother Club.
That's what it is.
Get that t-shirt made.
Get that t-shirt and go with the Brother Club.
We'll get Brother Club, but instead of like the Bullet Club skull on the front, we'll get like a Hulk Hogan with a big moustache.
We'll be iTunes to Ice Radio, guys. That t-shirt may or may not be available soon. Right, well, Mike, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for listening, giving your honest opinions and feedback on this. Being the voice that I wasn't allowed to be somewhat, allegedly. I have got something else lined up, a follow-on episode for this. Obviously, once I get this out, if you're listening to it now, what I want you to do is I want you to contact me on Facebook or on Twitter. Just search for Ice Wrestling Podcast. Drop me a line, doesn't matter how you get in touch, just drop me a line. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. And then later on this week, I've already invited on a couple of the wrestling community, the British wrestling community, if you will, whether it be from fans or people that are involved backstage or wrestlers. We're going to get together, we're going to have a group discussion, and we're going to pick this apart bit by bit and really get everybody's kind of take on it. From both sides. Not everybody's going to agree with me, not everyone's going to agree with you, Mike. They're going to have their own thoughts and input, so keep your eye open for that one. But yeah, Mike, anything else you want to say before we wrap up here?
No, I mean, I'm pretty much, I'm pretty good with everything.
Well, wait to go there, Mike.
It was I will say it was an interesting listen, and you didn't really pull any punches. I'm quite proud of you for that one. It was good. It was good to listen, Steve. Well done.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm gutted, and I'm sure I know you are gutted as well, that you don't get to listen to the full thing. I know that you're itching to listen to it. I want to get it out there, man. I want to get it out there. It deserves to be out there, but until Daniel Hinkle's creator, not owner or founder, creator of 5-Star Wrestling, gives me that permission to do so, unfortunately, it's just for me and my ears. So, sorry, guys.
I will say this, Dan Hinkle's, you just cheer up, mate. You sound so sad when you're talking. First 20 minutes of that podcast, I was like, come on, mate. Maybe depressed. Sort it out.
I was trying to go with the natural flow of, how did you get involved? Have you trained? Have you been a manager? Have you put the ring up? Obviously the answer was no to most of that. And then we were going to get into the conversation with the big question, but then he saw what was coming. And as I said to him afterwards, you must have known these questions were coming, man. The only reason I put it out on my Facebook originally 3 months ago was asking this question about the cancellation and the alleged news of why he was cancelled, and that's why you contacted me and asked to go on the podcast. So you knew it was coming, and then to throw that card in there, the off-the-record card, was just, excuse my language, but it was a cunt trick.
It was. Everyone, he knew everyone wanted that answer, and he knew everyone was going to listen to this, knowing that. And I just hope that your listeners don't feel like they've been robbed.
To be honest with you, I feel, Mike, as if they have been robbed a little bit, because the feedback I was getting when I said I was going to be doing this interview was that they want to know about that question, and that question, believe me, was asked, and it wasn't just asked. This is the thing, very quickly, come back on this very quickly, this is the thing. When he, off the record, when he told me these reasons, and he went into great detail. I've never met this guy. He basically told a complete stranger over a telephone conversation the ins and outs and complete workings of why it was cancelled, how it was cancelled, when it was cancelled, who he told, what he told, why he told, and he went into far too much detail for my liking. And anybody that goes into that much detail when they're trying to explain, basically trying to dig themselves out of a hole, I just smell bullshit. He didn't need to go into that, mate. He could have just literally said, look, off the record, Steve, I'm not willing to talk about that. We can carry on this interview and talk about punk and the video game and everything else, but I'm not willing to talk about that, end of. But he didn't. He spoke for an hour long strong about why we should believe him, why he's not guilty, why everyone should get behind him. Yet he's not willing to tell people.
Why it's everyone else's fault.
Yes, absolutely, man. Yeah. Wasn't it? Did you pick up on that as well, yeah?
Yeah, a lot of blame. I mean, I love how it was like, oh, well, we started, and then what culture started a couple of weeks after us? That's suspicious. No, it's not. It's obviously not suspicious. What culture obviously cornered another market, and it's also doing really well. You can't blame another company's successes for your failure.
Absolutely, man. And that happens too often. Too often that happens. Guys, as I said, listen out for the follow-up podcast. It's going to be taking place in the next few days. Keep your eye on my Facebook page, Isaacs Wrestling Podcast. There's going to be a lot of content thrown out there as well, but I love getting your feedback, and as much as I can, I will include on the podcast as well. So once again, Mike, thank you very much, and until next time, good night.
You have been listening to the Isaacs Wrestling Podcast. Follow Steve Saxon on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Isaacs Podcast. And remember to subscribe and 5-star rate this podcast on iTunes. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Saxon has left the building.